The way that Zendaya has out-diva'd everybody at this event, I know Marilyn Monroe is in the ground going... If you were in awe like the rest of the world when you saw Zendaya's Golden Globes look, you might be even more in shock to find out that this look was inspired by 4 black women who dominated Hollywood. Hello, my beautiful people! Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl, Mami Tiff, and I am so glad that you are joining me here today for the official episode 3 of the Give Her Her Flowers series. Who knew episode 3 would come so soon? Now, if you're subscribed, you already know that I actually just posted episode 2 yesterday on Doechii's The Nile is a River and her just being an overall creative genius. So definitely make sure to go check that out. But today we are going to be focusing on who are these icons behind the legendary look that Zendaya showed us last night. So let's get into it. Whoosh. Now, before I get into all these beautiful black women and tell you everything that you need to know about them, let's break down Zendaya's look from last night. This gorgeous orange gown that she donned on the red carpet was by Louis Vuitton, and to pair perfectly with this dress were her matching heels, which the internet is conspiring that these are custom socates. La Roche, who has been historically styling Zendaya for years now, has talked about how he always puts Zendaya in socates, which is why the internet is like, well, these have to be custom socates. And then dazzling across her neckline was this Bulgari necklace, and then there's the bling bling bling, bitches is mad, word to Nene Links. Zendaya wore a ring on her finger that seems to look like an engagement ring. Now, sources are starting to report that Zendaya and Tom Holland are officially engaged, but that's not what we're talking about in this here video. So let's get into it. So who are the 4 icons that inspired Zendaya's Golden Globes look? Well, based off of La Roche's Instagram caption, aka the image architect who has been the mastermind behind styling Zendaya since 2011, we can confirm that these 4 women are Dorothy Dandridge, Eartha Kitt, Diahann Carroll, and Joyce Bryant. So let's find out who they are and how they've impacted Black Hollywood. First up is Dorothy Dandridge. She was born on November 9th, 1922 in Cleveland, Ohio, where she was raised by her mother, Ruby. At the age of 5, she started performing and going on the road with her sister and mother. The trio act was better known as the Wonder Children. A lot of Dorothy's training came from a woman named Eloise Matthews, aka Auntie Mama, who unfortunately abused Dorothy when she was growing up. This trio, though, would go on to hit the road and perform acrobatics ballet at churches and schools. And later on, we would get to know who Dorothy Dandridge is when she hit the big screen. Now, I won't be breaking down all of these women's every movie, every stage performance, every song that they've created, because honey, personally, that could be a video of its own for each one of them. So we're just gonna hit the high points, all right? So back to it. So in 1954, Dorothy would star as Carmen Jones in the Carmen Jones movie, which she claims was, quote, the best break I've ever had. And this movie was such a big deal because it was the first official film that had an all-black cast. Mind you, this film came out 5 months after Brown versus Board of Education had been signed, which is a huge Supreme Court case that integrated schools. Dorothy would also be nominated for an Oscar for the category of Best Actress for her role as Carmen Jones, which would make her the first black woman to do. Other films that she's known for is 1957's Island in the Sun, which I personally love this movie. I remember the first time I watched it, and the first thing that really pointed out to me was the fact that Dorothy Dandridge was in an interracial relationship in this movie, which again, honey, this was 1957. This was really pushing the envelope with that one. Okay, this was a decade before Loving v. Virginia, which basically made interracial marriages legal in the United States. She's also known for 2 films that she made in 1958, Tamango and the Decks Ran Red, and 1959's Porgy and Bess. Also, one of my favorite photos of Dorothy Dandridge is the one that she has with Harry Belafonte, which came from the movie Carmen Jones. And this photo is so legendary, y'all. Till this day, people still dress up like them for Halloween. Dorothy also had recorded music that was released in 1999. It was placed on an album called Smooth Operator. And I can't find an official news source that can confirm this, but apparently the music was made in 1958 but wasn't released until 1999 by Verve, who was the record label that didn't release release it until then. The incomparable Dorothy Dandridge would unfortunately pass away from a drug overdose in 1965 at the age of 44, which just breaks my heart because she was so young, and just full of life and so talented. And now we're gonna move on to Miss Eartha Kitt. And before we move on to her, let me just say that she deserves so much more from this world. So Eartha was born in North South Carolina. Yes, you heard me correctly. North South Carolina. Not North Carolina, but North South Carolina. On January 17th, 1927. And at a very young age, her mother and father abandoned her and she had to end up going to live with other relatives that were in the South. And these relatives really mistreated Eartha. They did not take care of her, and Eartha unfortunately was often teased for being mixed race. So her mother was black and Cherokee, and then her father was white. So she ended up moving to New York City to go live with her aunt at the age of 8. Yes, you heard me correctly. At the age of 8, she went up to New York. Crazy. There she would end up enrolling in the New York School of Performing Arts, and at 16 years old, she'd land a scholarship to attend the Dunham's Dance Troupe. Now let's get into my girl's career, because this diva. Now I personally know Eartha from the 1992 film Boomerang with Eddie Murphy, but she has been acting since the 50s, at least here in America, where she'd act on the big screen as well as on Broadway. But prior to her career in America, she was actually a nightclub singer in Paris. Now some of her movies to check out are 1957's The Mark of the Hawk, 1958 St. Louis Blues, 1965's Uncle Tom's Cabin, and she also starred as the original OG Catwoman. Okay, this was way before Halle Berry became Catwoman, as the OG Catwoman in the Batman television series in the late 60s. In 1968 though, her career would take a downturn. She ended up speaking out against the Vietnam War at a luncheon that was hosted by Lady Bird Johnson at the White House. And according to the Washington Post, she stated, quote, "You send the best of this country off to be shot and maimed. No wonder the kids rebel and take pot." Honestly though, did she lie? And unfortunately, President Johnson did not take too kindly to those words, and her career ended up taking a downturn during this time, so she ended up going to perform abroad. Now, Miss Eartha, when I tell you sis can sing, ooh, she could sing. Her album called That Bad Eartha was released in 1953, and she had songs not only in English, but also in French and in Spanish. I mean, sis was a linguistic if you ask me. And one of my personal faves is C'est Si Bon. But one tune that I got on replay by Miss Eartha is Santa Baby. That 1953 Christmas hit, wow. I mean, that to this day, if you put on any Santa Baby, you gotta put on Eartha Kitt. And I don't make the rules. That's just what it is. Eartha would go on to live a very long life, but in 2008, at the age of 81, she would unfortunately die from colon cancer. Next up is the icon, the legend, Diahann Carroll. Diahann was born on July 17th, 1935 in the Boogie Down Bronx, New York. Now when I looked up Diahann's childhood, I came across this video that she did for Oprah's Masterclass, where she basically shared how she came from a poor household, and at a young age, her mom actually took her down to North Carolina to visit her aunt, and the very next day Diahann would wake up and her mom was gone. Her mom didn't tell her she was leaving. Her mom did not let her know that she was staying with her aunt, and this happened for like about a year. Now Diahann carried this abandonment for years, she said. Up until she was in her 50s was really when she forgave her parents for the first time. Nevertheless, going back, Diahann would end up coming back up to New York, and she attended Manhattan School of Performing Arts and would also kick off her career as a nightclub singer. She, like Dorothy, starred in Carmen Jones and Porgy and Bess, but outside of that, she became the star of the 1974 film Claudine, which resulted in her getting nominated for a Golden Globe for the Best Actress category. Now, the movie that I know of her personally, and one of my favorite movies, is Paris Blues. She ended up playing the character Connie Lampson. And now for those of us who are familiar with this movie, I don't know if it's just me, but the character Ram Bowen, who's played by Paul Newman, I just feel as though they should have been the love interest in the movie. Like that very early on scene when they first meet, the tension on it, you can't cut it. It's as thick as a rock. The chemistry that Connie and Ram have on camera together is, to me, so much better than the chemistry that Connie and Eddie Cook had on, which was played by Sidney Poitier. And Connie and Eddie would end up being together in the film, which is interesting that I don't think that their chemistry was that great on camera. camera, you know, because that isn't contradictory to things that I will not be discussing on this here channel. If you want to look up information surrounding them too, that is at your own will. We're moving along. I also know her from 1997's Eve Bayou, where she starred as the voodoo priestess. I will never forget that movie. Diahann had a very long career, not just on the big screen, but also on the little screen and on stage for Broadway. She was actually the first Black woman to have her very own sitcom based around her being the main character, called Julia, and that came out in 1968 and went on for 3 seasons. And Diahann also put her time in the studio. She came out with an album straight from 1959 to 1962. Some dedicated from films and productions that she was a part of. And then in 1967, she dropped her Nobody Sees Me Cry album. Diahann Carroll went on to live for 84 years, but died sadly to cancer in 2019. And then we have to get into the lovely Joyce Bryant, aka the bronze blonde bombshell herself. She was also known as the Black Marilyn Monroe at the time, so she truthfully was just that girl. She was born on October 14th, 1928 in Oakland, California, and according to W magazine, Zendaya's dress was directly supposed to pay homage to a Zelda Wynn Valdez dress that Joyce wore on her 1954 album cover of Runnin' Wild. Quick side note, Zelda Wynn Valdez was a Black woman fashion designer who too was breaking boundaries at that time. Now, there isn't much online about Joyce's upbringing other than that she eloped at the age of 14 and the very next day got it annulled because she was trying to, quote, to escape her family. Apparently, Joyce grew up in a very strict household. Now, Joyce would go on to break through a lot of glass ceilings in her career. One being that some people really deem her as the first representation of dark skin in Hollywood that made it mainstream. She's most known for her live performances, as she performed at places like New York's Copacabana and became one of the first Black entertainers to sing at the Casino Royale in Washington, D.C. and at the Miami Beach Hotel, which there is where the Ku Klux Klan specifically harassed her. Joyce was known about speaking up and out about racial issues during the time. Okay, sister was a true activist. Joyce would end up dying at the age of 95 and recently passed away in 2022 due to having complications with Alzheimer's disease. On this episode of Give Her Her Flowers, we will be gifting tulips to these legendary 4 Black women, as tulips represent fame, which truly is what all of these women possessed, and that we shall never forget. If you enjoyed this series of Give Her Her Flowers, please let me know down in the comments. Also, feel free to spread some more facts, some more information about these lovely women. I know some of us know who these women are, but for those of us who don't, I just really wanted to make sure that we acknowledge them, and so that we can keep Black history alive, especially during a time like this. But yeah, y'all, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like, comment, subscribe, share it to your mama, your auntie, your bestie, whoever you know, to be honest. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Mami Tiff.